Cancorla. Anara, I think that to even if one were to describe the supports that have been given to Irish farmers during this crisis as pathetic, it would actually be generous. I think essentially the government, and in your response today, you've referenced schemes from other departments. We're talking about providing money to farmers that they were entitled to anyway, just a little bit sooner, and then the reliance on the EU package. And that EU package that has been described here as inadequate of €76 million, I would go as far to say that it's nothing short of an insult to our family farmers. If you compare the EU package with that of the US administration, €20.7 billion of a package put in place at the US level, and Christ knows that administration has got a lot of things wrong. But there are only 2 million farmers across the United States. There are 10.5 million in the EU, but I think it's clear that there is a greater commitment to the future of agriculture across the Atlantic. And I have to tell you, Minister, that the farmers that I've spoken to were stunned, absolutely stunned, by the inadequacy of the EU package. And then they heard your first words in response to it, and your words were, and I quote, "I welcome this response from the Commission." And farmers, I have to say, were shocked by that. Yes, you went on to say it will probably need to go further, but it must be said that many have said to me that your response and the government's response to that EU package was as pathetic as the package itself. So my first question is this: considering that it's clear that the EU isn't likely now to provide the type of package that's required, or certainly as quickly as is required, will you work in government to deliver a domestic scheme that actually provides funding directly to those farmers who need it urgently and desperately, and will you do that as quickly as possible? My second question relates again to the beef sector, and we've seen, and has been mentioned here already through last year's protests, that beef farmers were already, many of them, on their knees. Then in the midst of this coronavirus emergency that has really made a bad situation much worse, we hear stories of the meat industry actually importing foreign beef into Irish factories. Now, I've asked you in writing to intervene in that situation, and you've refused, saying that these are commercial decisions that have been made. So whatever about intervening, my question to you today is, will you publicly condemn the actions of those factories that have been importing beef when prices given to Irish farmers are on the floor? And will you contact the factory owners, asking them to cease this practice? This isn't about protectionism or denying. This is about having a quality product here in Ireland, and it doesn't make any sense, certainly if someone was coming at this from a patriotic point of view, for factories to be doing that. And finally, Minister, a simple question, and hopefully you'll be able to give me a yes or no answer, and that's as to whether or not you and your department will consider providing a compensation scheme to those poultry farmers who have experienced culls as a result of bird flu outbreaks. These are farmers that have suffered devastating loss in recent days and weeks due to an occurrence that they can't insure against. And in the absence of an insurance scheme, I think the government needs to provide support. So I'll leave it at that for now.
A minute and 25 seconds. Minister.
Thank you, Cancorla. The structure of this is very difficult because it's that opportune to...
People asking the questions consume all the time with the questions. They can't expect you to be able to answer. It's quite
we produce, Deputy... Sorry, Cancorla. Yeah, we'll try and give you simple answers that you might understand, Deputy. We produce about 600,000 tonnes of beef every year, and we export 90% of that. 300,000 tonnes approximately of that goes to the UK. The UK are presently, and their farmers' representatives are complaining to UK retailers about stocking Irish beef. We see a story running presently about the Polish approach to renationalisation. Your question, which I understand is, there is some popular traction for, is that we should be here clamouring for the Irish market for Irish beef. But the logical conclusion of that, Deputy, is a renationalisation across Europe of markets. So if we say, listen, the Irish market is exclusively, I would much prefer, sorry, Deputy,